Board Chair update. Just wanted to clarify some items relative to our budget deliberations and the finalization of our budget. So the board is responsible for establishing district goals, analyzing the data, and setting the budget we are provided by the city at their discretion without their consideration of student outcomes. The main function of the school board is to improve the performance of our schools, and we are accountable for student success, not the people that set our budget. Consistent, inadequate levels of funding leaves too many of our students behind and unable to reach their established benchmarks. Our staff is stressed to the maximum. If it were not for the COVID funding and other secured grants, we would not be able to operate, or I could argue, open the doors. The city keeps claiming they are distressed and budget decisions are based on the impact to the mill rate. The problem is that only seems to apply to the education budget. The internal service fund that we pay a substantial amount into, but are unable to utilize, has had a $4 million transfer out to cover the city budget in the last 2 years without any input from the Board of Education. We often hear about shared sacrifices, but only when it applies to the Board of Education. If we were trying to get through challenging times, they would not be providing the city budget with an increase of $5,202,755, and the Board of Ed with an operational increase of $591,575, and a capital increase of $750,000, for a total Board of Education allocation of $1,341,575. The total increase available from the city budget to have the least restrictive impact on the mill rate was $6,544,330. However, the split was $79.50 to the city and $20.50 to the Board of Education. While the city will continue to debate that the school project is impacting this, I would like to remind everyone of the gross budgeting methodology that is done by our city. 100% of the school project is budgeted for in the bonds they have secured. The state will be reimbursing the city 85% of that total amount. The bottom line is the city secured funding to increase their departments, but not provide enough to help our students retain student supports. Education funding supports our students' future and our community's future, but somehow every year we fail to see that. The certified salary increases that were approved by the city council should be funded, period. I feel strongly that meeting after meeting, they are attempting to manufacture a Board of Ed crisis in order to shortchange our students. And as a taxpayer, not just an elected official, that's not acceptable. Our staff and this board have worked extremely hard to account for every dollar that is spent looking for new approaches and programming to meet the increasing demands of our student populations. We have been trying to build a solid foundation of support to help the students be successful. We have been able to have some cost savings that we need to reinvest in education. That's the only way we're going to be successful. Over the last few years, we have returned these funds to the city. Please let me keep in mind several of these years were COVID years and not normal years. So the budget surpluses were not retrieved in normal years. The Board of Education has been faced with minimal increases that do not meet our contractual increases. We must plan to ensure we can support students and all the mandates we are expected to follow. I'd like to remind everyone why we're an Alliance district. Recently, the state passed legislation requiring districts to invest in scientifically based reading programs. For several years, the central office leadership has been expressing the concern and the need for a reading curriculum update to prevent our students from falling farther behind. If we cannot support the most basic needs of students, such as teaching our students how to read, then what are we doing as a school district and a community? There is no doubt in my mind that we would have fought for 5 years to ever be considered for funding for a new reading program, and I doubt we would have gotten it at that. In order to fund the necessary materials to provide students what they need, it was imperative that we purchase the reading materials that are so vitally necessary this year. Based on these needs, the Board of Education purchased the curriculum this year, and it's something I will stand behind completely, that it was the right thing to do for our staff and our students, and I have no regrets. I would also like to point out that the city has control of our allocated budget total number for operating and capital, but does not have line item expenditures. I have spent years trying to come to the table to sit down and discuss the one item every year that impacts the budget greatly: insurance. While we are deliberate on how we will manage next year's budget without destroying the progress that has been made, I cannot avoid having insurance be a part of this discussion. While we still do not have a final number from the city on the amount that we actually owe, we do not agree with the estimate that was provided to us back in February, so have implemented into our budget our own calculation. The amount historically has been calculated on the average of 4.5 years of claims and the administrative fees. The city's number in February reflects the Board of Education portion being 66.79%, but our calculation based on the actual claims and administrative fees is 63.49%. To be safe, we allocated 64.33 in our budget, which is somewhere in the middle while we negotiate this. That percentage totals $14,015,811 compared to the city dollar amount that was given, which is not final, of $14,543,083. In addition, as previously discussed, our employees pay towards the cost of the insurance, but the Board of Education does not receive any credit for the amounts our employees pay. We are billed the full amount. I wish we were not in a position to consider what I am going to discuss next, but I am not willing to consider cutting staff the last week of school with limited time to secure employment to support their families. I am also not willing to participate in the regression of our students when they have already lost so much to COVID. When looking at how we arrive at a reduction in our budget of $2,646,167, I am asking the board to consider the following: a reduction in our insurance of $1,380,895. This number is based on 80% of our employee premiums to cover the health insurance. I picked 85% because of any potential staff turnover and change in coverage plans due to that. I'm also requesting a transfer of $1,265,272 from the general budget to ARC 3, which must be expended next year. This is a one-time measure to avoid egregious staff layoffs. These are necessary positions in the day-to-day operations of the school and will create a large budget gap next year, and I want to be very clear on that point. This would involve moving the following positions from general budget, and all of you know these are positions that we have strongly supported being moved to general budget and have worked really hard over the last decade to get into general budget. They are 11 interventionists, 2 registered behavioral therapists, 1 BCBA, 4 security paras. We are very limited in what can be used in this grant, and this would require a budget modification and for me to get approval from the state. Additionally, we would still require a reduction of 2 special education teachers and a Torrington High School social worker. None of these cuts that I support. I'd also like to take a moment to address the Alliance funding. Alliance funding is provided to the lowest performing districts in the state to help student achievement, lowest performing. The money comes directly to the Board of Education and can only be used for very limited items. This funding cannot be used to supplant our operating budget, so to suggest that is irresponsible. I am passing out the criteria that Alliance funding can be expended for. This money has very strict oversight from the state, as it should, and can only be used for the purposes identified. New positions can be considered if approved by the Alliance Department, but only if it meets the very stringent criteria. No one should be looking at this funding to address the day-to-day needs of a school system. That's the responsibility of the city. Lastly, I would like the board to consider the following. After numerous discussions with legal counsel since last Thursday night, I would like to request that the Board of Education request a forensic audit of the internal service fund at the city. I'd also like to immediately form an ad hoc committee to draft a request for proposals to gather data to begin the process to move our insurance to our own plan and separate from the city's plan. This committee will also work to put out to bid all of our other insurances. As we have seen from building committee, this could provide savings. I know that this is a broad move and something that's going to have a lot of consequences, but we have this discussion every year and I think it's time to end it. Thank you for the opportunity to summarize these items and all your willingness to keep the focal point of the Board of Education on our students. That's really who we are here to serve.
Here.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you.
Are you taking questions?
I'm gonna, when we open up the discussion to the budget. So first we have to talk about the 22-23 budget. So determining what the exact surplus is very difficult because we're continuing to receive invoices. We're not closing out the books. I don't know, Scott, if you just want to give a brief, quick analysis of where we stand as of right now, understanding there's still pending invoices.
Yes. So, I ran everything Monday, so the latest numbers are as of Monday, and then we also met with all the we met with all the department heads to see if there's any monies that they're going to be spending for the rest of the year that hasn't been encumbered or hasn't had a PO yet. So I think we've captured those pretty much at this point. So I am pretty comfortable that it looks like we're going to be ending the year with actually a $550,000 surplus. And it's just by chance that that's a whole number, I assure you. It really is. And that with the $200,000 that we're going to put into the capital reserve for the turf field, which we try to put money away every year, that would leave us with a surplus, a projected surplus of about $350,000. Now, the only caveat is something can come up over the next 2 weeks, but barring anything coming up, I'm pretty comfortable with that number as we sit here tonight.
So the question is, we would have to request from the city to be able to move part of that money into capital account. So do we want to consider making the request for a percentage of that, waiting? So we can't carry over money, so we would have to get approval from the city to use that money for capital.
Could they decline that request?
They can decline that request.
Yeah, what else can we spend it on?
Is there something else we can, what can we do?
Supplies.
Yeah, what can we use it on?
So we could spend it to purchase things this year.
Yeah, no, I think we should do that.
Spend it,
Yeah.
Pre-purchase things that are in the 23-24 budget.
Scott's frowning on that one. No,
I don't think you can. No,
Yeah. But
no.
Supplies and things. Subscriptions that have you get early pay subscriptions.
it's like a purchase for next year.
Right. Because you have to be using it in the.
Right.
Yeah, you really shouldn't be expending this year's budget money for things that are actually going to
Right.
happen next year.
John,
But didn't Her Honor say that the Board of Ed could move its surplus into capital without putting a number on it?
Yeah.
So it would seem like if they said that that's what we can do, they'd have to keep their word. To me,
Well,
And they cut our capital by that much.
In the past, the Board of Finance has requested that we do outline how we are going to use it. So that they know, and then when we are asking for the capital reserve monies, then they can actually go back to the record that says that was for the middle school foyer, or that was for the Torrington driveway. We've done much better when we've been very, very specific. in how we will use those funds.
Yeah.
Could we just put the whole thing in the turf field, so it means we don't have to do it next year? Because that's a transfer to the turf field, right? So if we take that 300, we could put that extra money also into the turf field fund, which would make us not be obligated or feel the need to do it next year, which would save a little bit in the 23-24 budget. And that would not be pre-purchasing, it's an allocation to the turf field, which we know we're going to spend.
Yeah, so they would still have to approve that.
Unless we spend it.
And it's arbitrary because it's not 200 that we're putting.
Traditionally, we put to 100,
100.
Right.
200,000 in for the turf field.
Right.
Because this is the replacement, it'll cost us about $1 million, $1.2 million to really do that replacement.
Or another project that we have, we have a specific capital budget needs that is now no longer going to be funded.
So we have that. Do you want to pass that out so people
Sure.
can see what we're not
Yeah.
going to be able to fund?
Well, it's a good idea. If it's something you can buy or pay for now.
So there's John's original request and then the cutback request of what actually went to Board of Finance.
But this would still have to be, the request would still have to be made because it's a GB operating
Correct,
funding that would still have to say, we want to transfer it.
correct.
But the alternative to all of this is just returning it to the city's fund balance. So it's always better generally to request that it can go to a capital reserve account to be used. Is give it to them to loot next year, which is what they do with our surpluses generally.
Yes, there's a couple more for me.
Fortunately,
Oh, I'm sorry.
So this is everything,
One more.
everything on these pages for 23, 24.
It's by year.
Right, but so everything in the 23, 24 column, we're not gonna be able to,
So we have
Cover.
750 we were allocated
Total.
plus the 500,000 it was stated from the East School sale.
okay,
But that money has already been, it's really,
Yes.
where's that,
500,000 has already been allocated to project
what kind of projects?
that we have.
Oh, okay.
So hasn't the East School money already been allocated to projects?
There's been no confirmation to me yet. I will ask for that just so we have the confirmation.
Yeah.
We haven't received anything yet. That may not be happening till the end of this month.
We don't. So right now we should just go with the
Correct,
750
that's-
because we don't know. We're actually getting the money.
So you're talking, what can we pull forward?
So we have 750,000.
And
But we-
and Forbes School alone is 480.
It's for, right.
Right.
We have
So,
some tough decisions to make.
okay.
And so John had done, as Fiona said, a reduction list, and I thought we had those copies. I apologize. Kim is just doing his suggestions in should we have had the occasion to look at reductions, and now here we are. So it will be helpful to have that those copies. Just to see what he was suggesting that we do move forward. I know that when we're looking at Forbes, for example, in his first cut, he was looking at making sure that we had the water heaters for the first floor, the third floor, and the front entrance. What do we look at?
We're looking at
Are you on that?
pool right
Okay.
here. These are the recommendations that John said we keep, you're saying, Sue, right?
These are the ones in the original plan.
Right.
So originally, when you do this, we have to submit this in December. So we have no idea what our funding is
Right.
gonna be, which is
Right.
what the challenge is. So then the copies that Kim is making is to show you what his suggestions are in the event, which is where we are right now, that we don't have as much funding as we had thought.
Mhm.
And keep
So,
in mind also that there's 819,363 in capital tech budget,
right, and
the last page.
so I'm gonna have Rachel speak to that for just a little bit, but we do have SR2 funds, so I know that Rachel's been working with Ghana. The SR2 funds need to be expended by September of 2023. So we tried to keep that aside in case we didn't get very much capital, because traditionally we don't get very much. And technology has to be funded elsewhere. So I know Rachel's been working with Donna to see what she could pull from this proposal. So if you want to speak to that, Rachel, I think that would be helpful.
Yeah. So I did pull out the Chromebooks as well as Chromebook licenses. We did get a decent amount from ECF this year, last round of ECF, so, that was fortunate to get those in.
You want to explain ECF?
ECF is, the Emergency Connectivity Fund that was started during COVID. There has been 3 rounds of it. There has not been confirmed a 4th round. They were really unsure there was going to be a 3rd round, so I'm not really crossing my fingers for a 4th. But we were able to get a good order of Chromebooks with licenses this past round, so I feel more comfortable with that. And then the displays for smart boards, did have to reduce that number a little bit, but we were still able to get a decent number. Not sure exactly what the number got reduced to. It was like 40. So we would still be able to get an additional 40 smart boards out between the schools. And then the infrastructure to align all buildings, I believe we struck that for now. And laptop replacements, I believe stuck because our staff are currently working on very outdated devices, and they need to be updated, especially with Windows 10 sunsetting relatively soon.
So of this, you need 105, 150, you're saying? If my understanding is correct, that you need the laptop replacements?
Yeah, I'd say that's my big
Request.
And then you don't think the infrastructure upgrades to align the buildings is critical?
we struck that for now. We did get some of that through E-rate as well this year. We were able to get access points to some of our buildings, which will help with that infrastructure update.
Okay, so does the board want to consider of the 750, providing 105, 150 to Capital Tech, or that 105, 150 towards
Plus the
requesting the
190,
city?
120,
150.
because
It's the
instead of
laptop.
100, it's 40.
And what about
And then it
the
comes to
smart boards?
190, 120.
She said we had 40.
We had
Said we had
40.
40.
Oh, okay.
Oh, so I thought she was saying it was
said
buying
use
40,
the
but
whole
you
bit to
Have
40.
40.
Okay,
We're getting
so we're
40
gonna
out of
do
it.
getting 40 from it.
But that's out of- okay.
So that's no cost.
So that's no cost. Okay,
Right.
all right, okay.
So 40 was reduced.
It was reduced. Yes.
Right,
reduced
so there's
to
a
40. We were
zero.
Only able to purchase 40.
Right.
So there's no cost in that.
40 of the
though.
150.
It was covered by a grant.
100.
100 that were proposed.
But those were already purchased.
Correct. So the
Okay.
interact, well, we
Oh, we're
can,
going to displays. I thought we were talking about laptops.
okay, so let's just.
No, the smart
yeah,
boards.
the
Interactive displays to replace the old smart boards. We
Right,
do have ESSER funding, so if after this discussion, we say yes, okay, we will use that money for 40. Only 40, it's not 100, okay, leaving 60 to still be purchased at some point. Then the infrastructure upgrades we're waiting on. We did get some from E-rate, so that's a reimbursement to us, so that was helpful. And then the laptop replacements are still very essential to make sure that we have, because
Mhm.
we're woefully behind it. Especially staff and secretaries are both struggling in terms of that.
Absolutely.
Jeff,
I was just curious what the infrastructure upgrades are. I get the laptop thing, but the Windows 10 sunset isn't until October of 2025. So if we have infrastructure needs that are plaguing the district on a day-to-day basis, I would support a mix of the two. I obviously don't want to push off 150 laptops in the next year's budget, but if the infrastructure upgrades are required, we've had issues of the new buildings coming online. I think it's important to make sure the infrastructure is solid behind it. I'm not sure what they're asking for, but
I do agree.
That's
However,
it's the-
infrastructure updates are also a little tricky to
That's the
outline at this point because the
That's the-
building
it's-
infrastructure hasn't been fully spec'd out yet. I believe that's coming very, very soon, like final decision on what is needed in the new building. And then we want to make sure it matches the rest of our students. So, you know, we know that we're going, you know, or we're attempting to go in the direction of Cisco Meraki for access points as well as switches and things of that sort. So we did purchase those through E-rate. So we did get a portion of it, but as for doing more robust infrastructure updates, I think, you know, when we know what the building specs are gonna be, and we know that they can all communicate together, I think that would be a better use of money, so that we're not purchasing something and then saying, oh, wait, that doesn't communicate the way we want it to. We have to back it up.
So we're not really sure what the infrastructure upgrades were in this capital.
It was just a placeholder, and you'll see it throughout all of the years, so that we are able to continue to make upgrades to the buildings.
You know?
Did you have another one, Jeff?
I was
Sorry.
just, so the placeholder was just a percentage carryover on it, like a bump percentage to the next year. There's nothing actually earmarked for these upgrades.
Correct, right. Is in preparation for the new building to make sure.
In your opinion, Rachel, what would be the largest impact to the most number of people? So do the smart boards provide some kind of an increase in educational capabilities that maybe a percentage, looking to obviously take the limited money we have and have the largest impact possible with it? In your professional opinion, what would you?
The laptop still, absolutely. And also you have to remember that there's smart boards that are gonna be repurposed in the current high school building, so we'll have those to distribute to classrooms as well. So I really do think that the laptops are top priority, especially for office staff. Some of these laptops are 6 years old, they've been kind of managed countless numbers of times, they're just failing. And they're not enough for what our staff need to do, especially the registrar staff. So I really do believe that laptops is still top priority.
For the verification.
I just wanted to update, it was 50 for the smart board.
52, okay.
Thanks, Donald.
Sorry, I can't remember the.
No, it's good.
So I'm good with
We
the
already
five
got-
to move
we
it
already
forward,
got
but that's just me.
They're not gonna buy anymore.
We have a lot of other things
So
to
there's nothing, this is.
cover. Seems like you.
No. Right, they were gonna, that was additional. They've already got 52, so they're getting no more. So.
They're getting rid of this altogether.
Yeah,
Yeah.
for now, yes.
So of the $350,000 surplus, we could request 51 smart boards and the laptop replacement. Because I think with those type of items, we want to be able to get them as soon as possible, so they have the summer to do it rather than
Very true.
waiting.
So get the balance
We're
of
getting, we can't get them all, but we're gonna look to get 40 in ESSER.
52.
52.
52.
52, she just changed the number. Donna looked it up.
So 48.
So like,
So
yeah,
48.
Which is
240,000.
Yeah.
What is it, Ellen?
230,304. And the 105, 150 gives us 335, 454.
We need something for 15,000, which happens to be the water heater.
Which water heater though? First or third floor? So only pick one.
The third floor one will do more damage if they don't.
That's true. It's crazy that we even have to think that way.
Yeah, I mean, we'll get to capital because then we would have 750 for these projects.
Oh, okay.
right, so now I'll pass out if we're ready for John to go, because we're trying to back into all of this
Right.
stuff. These are his suggestions,
Okay.
so the ones that have the yellow highlight
You're not-
are the thing that,
Is there extras for them?
Yeah, I need, you.
Oh, Kathy doesn't, oh,
Yeah.
one was for Sue.
Oh, okay,
Yeah.
all right. Okay.
so.
Cause it was, that's an old one. John just did this one.
So
There
if
is
you
one.
look at the things that are left, So the yellow highlighter does not make it easier. I don't know why you did it this way. But you can see what is left in the budget at the end of each year. So it says 2023, 24. So for example, exactly what you were saying, making sure that we install the new water heater to the first floor, to the third floor, and rebuild the front entrance. So then that would be 150. That would be allocated for. He would take out some of those other items.
What about the
What other?
ADA compliance issues? Isn't that something, can we get fined for not being ADA compliant?
You know, I asked Kerma early on when this first came up, after the feasibility study, and they were never able to get back to me in terms of saying a definite.
No.
Yes, you will,
Which
because
one?
our buildings were
Yeah.
built during the time when that was not an ADA compliance issue.
Right.
So,
So grandfather friendly.
yes, you're grandfathered until, right. Until you make a change like, okay, we're having the new middle school, high school, and then
Right.
everything has to be in compliance. Or someone says, I need access to, and then we say, okay, it's an emergency, we need to address it. But it still stays as a placeholder because we do need to address it, and John moved it off into 24, 25.
Can I just, because we're at a special meeting, this agenda item, we can actually only discuss the surplus.
Oh, yeah, we're into, yes.
Okay.
So we're
Yeah.
gonna stop the regular discussion on the capital. So are people okay with requesting 233,004 for 48 smart boards? And 105, 150 for 150 laptops,
Yes.
and up to 200,000 for turf, depending on what the final surplus comes in.
And that leaves us
That
at
gives some
14,546.
And then sure.
Well, we'd be short by a few $100, or we
Yeah.
could leave that as cushion to Scott's earlier point in case something
Comes up in the next couple weeks.
Yes,
So don't do the water spare.
Well, we
Only
have to
one.
Try and short it on the
No?
contractor, right? If we're budgeted, if the capital costs for 15, because that's the estimated cost, and we're left $500 short, I mean, we could try and squeeze a little bit out of somebody, but I'm also
why don't we address the water heater and
regular.
capital
Okay.
So you're saying this out of surplus?
surplus?
So I just want to make the clarification, although it was originally in capital, we do have the opportunity. And it's in the state statute, so that if we take it out of 5,743, we can purchase replacement technology out of operational budget. So I know it may seem weird that we're going from capital to operational. However, it does say that it's actually the 700 line item. So things that are in 700s for budgets are replacement for computers,
Replacement for vehicles,
replacement for vehicles
Mhm.
as well. It's a different specific code, but it is
But
in the
it's allowable.
700s, absolutely.
right?
And also the particular code for technology is 743.
So we
So
could
we
just,
would take it out of.
so we could move ahead and purchase these items,
And the only thing we'd have to request.
as long as Scott looks nervous.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We did.
Good with this.
All right.
So is there any opposition to that? No, from any board members?
Just clarify what we're doing then.
We're gonna purchase 48 smart boards out of our surplus
Yeah,
and 150 laptops.
and that's it.
And then we're gonna request of the city to transfer $200,000 up to 200,000, depending on what it falls out on
To the
for the
capital
turf,
reserve.
capital
For the
reserve for the turf, specifically for turf.
Okay,
Yeah,
I was just gonna suggest a slight change, even putting 200,000 on turf. What if we say we're gonna carry 200,000, direct them to spend whatever is left on the technology at the end. That way you're not, if somebody new starts, or if you have some kind of unexpected expense, you order whatever is left. Scott will have a much better idea in the final week what's left, won't you?
Yeah.
And that way you can maximize what Rachel can get, you can take care of.
Gary,
I'm just wondering, This seems to be concerned, I don't know about you or about other people, but I just want to make sure we don't have a problem, that's all.
Well, my only question, Scott, was, so we're like tapping everything out, right? We're taking the rest of it away. And I had 2 kids move in today, both sped, that require ESY, that have to come onto the list, and they're not encumbered. We didn't discuss them yesterday, they moved in today. I could have one move in tomorrow, that's 2050. So I guess I'm just confused, like, we still have a few weeks. So I'm confused. That's all.
Well, that's why I think looking at,
Right.
right, looking at these items gives you the flexibility to see what we can purchase as we get closer. Because we will either need to encumber those expenses or expend them by 2/30. But this would give, I think, more flexibility to, if we don't have to go and request the money be moved, I think it's much easier
Right.
for us to know what our true one will be.
I mean, I could go shopping tomorrow. Right?
Well, that's us.
To be, but if we can say, obviously, the priority will be our students who just moved in.
Yeah.
Right, not.
Right, no, absolutely.
And then
Absolutely.
go
No
down.
vacancy signs.
Yeah, I mean, this is really some direction because we're gonna start losing people over the next couple of weeks to vacations and
Mhm.
we don't want to be left with the inability backed into a corner to do anything because of our inaction. So, we could motion that when we get to the motion section, which we're not there yet, but we could motion that it first pay for any outstanding invoices, new special ed placements, and the balance would be used to purchase smart board laptops up to 48 and 150. And then any balance in addition to that would go towards the turf contingency.
That's
Mhm.
Yeah, we would just authorize the purchase of up to X amount of things. That's it.
And then leave it in the hands of the professionals. to-
Yeah.
But it just gives you some options. It's
Mhm.
really,
Right, and then we don't have to reconvene.
are you okay with that? We've got Laura.
Yeah, I'm okay now.
Sue.
Just trying to figure it out. Yeah.
Well, if we get 3 more people, then that's just.
Blows the rest of our budget, or the rest of our excess.
So Laura, we always considered you.
I do. Yeah, I
Okay,
just.
any other
Wanna make
questions
sure.
on surplus before we move on to next year's budget?
No,
No, that's good.
Okay, 23-24 budget. So I'm gonna open the floor. Or if people want me to clarify requests, I did just want to point out 2 quick things. There was statutory change. So now our transitional kids get till the end of the year when they're age 22, so we're gonna have a financial impact to that. The other item is we are gonna have some more outplacements. The goal has always been that it shouldn't just be financial. If we're not able to service the kids in-house, we should be outplacing them. So the budget that was used, there's been some discussion about, oh, it should have just been cut by this much. It's like that was a planned budget. That wasn't just a number that came out of nowhere. So I just want to put that on the record and then open the floor to any questions, discussions. Sue and then Ed.
I just want to go back to, I have a couple questions on the statement that you gave earlier. First question, the internal service fund where $4 million was transferred from that fund. That fund is funded by the insurance premiums?
Yes, it's the insurance.
Okay, so it's money that we put in. Money
And
them,
the city puts.
and the city puts in, we put in 64%-ish, is that the number?
That's the average of the last 4.5 years.
Okay,
That's how they calculate the premiums.
All right.
So.
and do we know what that 4 million was spent on? Did that
it's
come to
just-
us
it's
or to go to the city?
used- It goes to the
City?
city. It's used to reduce the impact on the mill rate. So instead of raising taxes,
Choose to reduce their budget.
they take the money out of the
That's
internal service
fantastic.
fund to reduce the impact on the mill rate.
That's great.
So we reduce the impact on the
Oh my gosh.
mill rate for the city.
It's a second fund balance.
Okay, but there's no consideration for the impact on the budget for the Board of Ed side.
I don't know the logic behind it.
That's just what's been happening. I'm just clarifying.
And then my next question, as far as the insurance part, I am not really familiar with that because of the way it's set up, this, municipal account or whatever. But does this have, what does this mean for our teachers? For everybody that has insurance in the district, what does that mean for them if we reduce what we pay the city? So we're not going to pay them because they already have the money, right?
So to my eyes,
they get the-
reducing the employee premium has no impact to the city because they're collecting that on the revenue side.
Okay,
So, and I've reduced it to make sure we're not overshooting the amount because we will have staff turnover. We have a lot of employees. and
Right.
People leave. If someone leaves with a family plan and is replaced by somebody who's a single, that
Mhm.
changes the amount that that person's putting in.
right.
So I feel that 85%
Is
is a
a
fair
safe
number. We don't have 15% turnover in a year.
Right. Okay.
Um,
All right.
So that was my logic, is there is no impact. Right now, I feel like we're paying 100% of the bill
Mhm.
and that our employees are also paying their premium.
Right.
We're prepaying.
And then the taxpayers are paying it too.
Correct.
Yeah.
Right.
So
All right.
that was the
That's
logic
what-
there because I don't
Yeah.
believe there is an impact, other than it's going to impact their revenue calculation of what they.
That's
thought
not
they
our
had
problem.
coming in.
That's not our problem. Right? How it impacts their revenue
Oh, no,
income.
it's not a fund.
It is, right. It's not our problem. So I just wanted to clarify that. And ultimately, if we're gonna go out to bid, as if I recall, when the building project went out to bid, there were significant savings on the insurance side, right? So we could expect that for our employees as well.
Yeah, I think we really just need to get a committee together to like hammer
I'll
all
get
of
on-
this
I'll get
out
on that.
and try to bring in like people from the
Volunteer.
PTA, the admin, all the people that are impacted by the insurance decision should be also
Yep.
be part of this committee.
Absolutely.
Excellent.
Um,
Okay.
And so no teacher's benefits will be jeopardized.
Correct.
That was my question. I want to make that clear,
Right.
right? Which I didn't suggest, I didn't think we would ever even
Yeah.
agree to that, but I just wanted to make it just clear that this is the direction we're going in is going to benefit.
Right, and jobs will actually be saved with their own money.
Right.
So,
Right, yeah. Go figure.
They say their own job.
Yeah.
Well, I was gonna say what John said to start, which is that it's contractual, meaning our employees, some of whom are sitting with us, are paying their employee healthcare premiums as they're obligated to do,
Mhm.
should they choose to take it. And the city is ripping them off for it. Because the taxpayer has already foot the full bill,
Right.
right? Whether it's direct city revenues or revenues that the city transfers to the Board of Education that we then transfer back into their insurance slush fund.
Mhm.
The taxpayer has already borne the cost of the employee's healthcare, and then the employee meeting their contractual obligations with no choice is paying additional money into the fund so that the city can rip them off for it.
Mhm.
Um,
In short, right?
yes, that's what's
Summary.
happening.
It would make
Uh,
sense if they put it in and they got it back. But in this case, especially this year, it's going
Well,
in.
right,
And nothing's
so,
going back.
and because they have no ability to control this process, we do
Mhm.
by reducing the amount of money that we pay in to save their colleagues' jobs in some cases, or save the programs that are serving the students. So with that in mind, what I actually wanted to ask, which is, so I assume the two sped teachers being reduced in your suggestion are the two open positions that are currently.
Correct.
Is the same true of this social worker position? Is that vacant at the moment?
The social worker position is new.
That's a,
but
okay,
yes, Donna's already submitted a grant for social worker slash BCBA. And we're hoping to get 120,000, which would help fund an RBT, a registered behavior technician as well. So we'll see what we're gonna get there, but chances are that we'll get some amount of money. So that's why we felt that this was a safer bet. Because we didn't want to have to cut anybody who was existing.
well, that's right. That was
Yeah.
like, okay, so that's what the word grant, parenthetical here is. It's just, we're gonna get a grant. And that's one of three, as I recall, new social workers that we had wanted. Is that right?
So it's been tough in terms of social workers. So we have 2 social workers there now to meet the special ed
Right.
services. And then we have another one who tries to service the whole entire high school. And so we really do need another.
Oh, no, we know that we're,
And then we
right.
also have community health and wellness, and we have McCalls who can come in to really do some targeted therapy.
Right, so
I-
2 new
right.
social worker positions
Right.
remain.
No, we
in the
requested
general budget.
3.
That's correct.
Okay, so all 3 are still, we're hoping if the grant one comes through, we would try to fill all 3.
Then we would have 4.
Okay,
Correct.
great.
Okay.
Then I think this is a fair and reasonable budget under the circumstances. No one is going to be thrilled about, not burning, but using federal funds to plug a dangerous shortfall with no long-term vision from our friends in City Hall to fix that. But if the choices are, use federal relief funds to plug the gaps or lay people off right now, I know what I would choose to do.
Right.
So I'm content as far as the operating budget goes. I'm content with what's been put in front of us. I think it makes sense. I think Fiona's estimates for the insurance make sense. Particularly because you've spoken with counsel regarding some of this stuff as well. So as much as it almost feels too easy.
Right.
I think it's the most reasonable option to continue to meet the needs of our students as best we can, knowing full well that it's going to be a terrible time next year.
Right. Well, right. I was get that.
That's
Sorry.
the big thing, because we're
We have to-
gonna be
where are
looking
we
at
gonna
that
put this money?
1,265,000 next year. Plus
gonna be go-
contractual increases.
Right.
John,
So
Sorry, John,
traditionally,
John.
when we're in this situation, we end up talking about unfilled vacancies. And we have at least one administrative unfilled vacancy that we are interviewing for now. Middle school dean,
The dean, we do.
we do. Do we have any others?
We also have a person who's leaving for our sped supervisor at the elementary level. So that we were waiting for this budgetary process to be completed before we posted that and refilled or.
so what's the
backfill that
second
position.
opening? I'm sorry, someone's
It's the-
leaving for a sped supervisor?
The sped supervisor is leaving, person who is now working at Vogel and Southwest. She's just leaving this particular area and
Oh.
she's getting married and moving to a different area, not to get into personnel matters.
Mhm.
And so we would have that posting. And we do have that in the budget. I believe it's in the Alliance budget,
Right, it's not general
that
budget.
position.
Okay, that's in the alliance, but the administrator is in.
The dean is in. Is that in
Alliance
Alliance?
also.
That's in Alliance. I think both deans are in the Alliance, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, sorry.
And we are filling that as well. Yep. And that's already been filled, sorry.
Penny, I would imagine.
It's
Right.
Okay.
Well, if there's a vacancy, the dean at TMS has a vacancy.
That is true. That is true. So-
Sorry.
It's on now.
I don't know.
Operating budget, special meeting, we gotta be careful, we don't go.
Yeah,
off topic.
sorry.
Yeah.
So there was some PE teachers and some other positions. I'm assuming that those new ones, as a part of this, we're just gonna go to Alliance.
We're gonna hope.
Those
put
actually,
them in
we
the line.
cannot put those in Alliance.
Right,
Those have to
that's-
stay in general
Yeah.
budget. So I'm really glad that you brought that
And I
up.
don't see
Which
that.
ones?
Correct.
Stipulation.
The Spanish, the
Oh, the
Spanish
Spanish.
teacher at the high school and the third PE teachers at the elementary must remain in general budget. You cannot put them in Alliance.
Because of the type of
Any
position.
Right,
So are they,
it does not,
They're in
They
our
are-
regular budget.
but they're in the adjustments that we've made. from the
correct.
short-
We've had-
So I kept those in and moved those other ones out.
Two PE.
Three. There were 3 PE.
Yeah.
3 PE at the elementary?
Right, and one
Okay,
Spanish,
okay.
That's
I think
correct.
there's only one now.
Spanish at the high school.
2 at the
but
elementary.
that, those have been filled.
No, they're just
Two.
they're still in the budget.
Oh,
There's
right now.
three.
Sorry,
Oh,
Sarah.
okay.
Those positions have been filled.
Well, we have not told them, except for the Spanish teacher, which we needed for credits. So that one's been confirmed, but the PE, everybody's been interviewed and they've gone through the process, but until this budget is approved by the board.
You can't make
We
anybody
did it,
offers, right?
exactly.
Yeah.
Correct.
But the Spanish teacher has been filled.
That had to be filled because of.
Correct, right, okay.
Yes, that's.
Any other
correct. Yes,
operating
she's-
budget questions?
Yes.
Operating only?
No, I was just questioning the PE. I thought there were only 2 PE added at the elementary level.
So we need one at Vogel, one at Torrington because of their huge
Their
numbers.
numbers,
And right now Southwest and
Okay,
Forest have to share, so
Got
they
it.
need one.
Okay, so there's 3.
So and then Gary?
Just back to the internal service fund, I'm sorry, I know, I'm
It's
just,
okay, yeah.
I'm like flabbergasted. I gotta get,
Yeah,
Really?
no, really.
so that $4 million that was transferred out, you said that you wanted to put forward to us a vote to retain a firm to conduct a forensic audit of that account.
So what I'm looking for is just straw poll for me to proceed on getting information on
Okay.
exactly what we wouldn't
What would
actually vote
entail.
on that. It would just be to authorize me to continue down the road to get more information
All right,
on what that would entail and what the cost would be to
Okay.
bring back to budget.
and then that
On
would
the fund
be
itself, not the 4,000 that the city took.
4
Well,
million.
that would be.
4 million.
Yeah.
the city
So-
took, Sorry.
Okay,
So
So-
an audit, so just,
but no, so my ultimate question is that a forensic audit would give us line item details on where that $4 million went, once it was transferred out of that fund,
no, so we would be auditing the internal service fund.
which that's what,
which- So all it would do is show
Oh.
you how much has come out of the fund and all the transactions out in that
okay,
fund.
not where the funds,
What's
where,
went in, what's went out, who
Okay.
put it in, who took it out.
okay, well,
But it
and that's
wouldn't
better
tell
than
us where
nothing.
that money went,
So we could ultimately be entitled to a reimbursement from that fund, right?
possibly, depending on the item.
Yeah, after a
Maybe.
decade of litigation.
Well,
Right.
That information
Goes up
isn't
for 5 years.
publicly available now.
I've been trying to, so in last year's presentation, so the first time I saw it was, I thought, was at this year's presentation when it said 2 million from internal service funds specifically.
mhm,
But then when I went and looked at last year's presentation, it also has 2 million from internal service. So I was a little busy the last few days, but I tried to start going through the audits to look each year for the last 10-year period.
that's crazy.
Because if it's $2 million a year, that's 20 million over 10 years. That's substantial. 4 million.
4 billion for us,
but-
that's a lot.
But
Yeah.
it's kind of
Okay.
hard to exactly figure it out. So I'm gonna spend a little bit more time on it, but the other part is there's an absence of a trust agreement, which most people that have this set up, there's a, and that's not the current administration. Like when this fund was originally set up,
Mhm.
that trust should have been set up. So we've been trying to work to get a trust set up, which has not had any movement.
Okay,
So I think it will also determine for the Board of Ed what in that fund actually is Board of Ed
okay,
versus city, without us trying to retrace
everything,
everything
Right.
to figure that out.
okay, that's
So
helpful.
Wyndham did this type of thing and a lot came out of theirs.
Mhm.
Because the accountants are looking at some transaction level detail, but it's mostly just that things come out of the right accounts.
Mhm.
It's not the same kind of audit.
Right,
This would be a much more extensive audit of
Okay.
just that one.
Right. Okay.
So eventually, if no one is opposed to it, I'll get all the information and bring it to budget. To see if we have a pallet to pay for this audit. Or split it 50-50, or the percentage of the fund over the last 5 years.
right,
And then if that's the route we're gonna take, once we determine how much we're willing to fund it. Then our attorneys will actually send a letter to the city. Notifying them.
does it have to be funded with Board of Ed funds?
To be funded by the fund.
No, the
Well,
audit,
If we win in the end, I suspect they'll have to
Funds
reverse
should.
this. But
no, I mean, if
Right.
the audit itself, what,
So
to
personally, I
pay
don't
for
want
it,
any money coming out of that fund. I feel very strongly that that money is insurance. money.
right, yeah,
It is not,
it shouldn't be used to
It's not
balance
a
the
check.
budget,
right,
right,
so I would prefer that we not do that,
okay,
Well,
you know.
we can, if we're serious, which we talked about 5 years, we go out and shop our own insurance. And manage our insurance ourselves.
Well, that's what our.
Well,
Which I believe we
we'll
should.
do it.
Okay, we are gonna talk about
Yeah.
this. Okay,
But I think
That's what
there's
the ad hoc committee
simultaneous
would
things
Yeah.
that need to happen.
okay, that's
Yeah.
included as well, okay,
yeah,
Yeah.
because we will save money.
yeah,
So, but the
absolutely.
insurance. we need to take out of regular meetings because there's gonna be a lot involved in that
Mhm.
and bring in some, you know, there's a lot of people involved in that fund. Our retirees are in that fund, right?
Mhm.
I mean, we have a lot of different,
Right.
people that have an impact.
Have a
by what
stake in it.
happens in there. So,
And for those who don't remember, we started a process like this several years ago and it got derailed. So
correct. We've been trying to
Oh.
work.
Yeah,
2019.
We've been talking, we've been talking
even
about
before that.
sitting with the city since I got on the board to figure out if there's a better way we can do this. And I haven't been on as long with some folks.
Yes,
There's no benefit,
ever since I've been on.
Right.
No, none.
but we can't go out and talk about shopping our insurance before we do anything.
So
else.
because we're self-insured, there's this fund and we don't obviously want to just walk away from what we have
No, I
in that
understand.
fund because we need to be able to satisfy claims. We don't want disruption. I've talked to board chairs in several towns that have done this and how it worked and what happened and what they did to facilitate that. And you know, it's a fight along the way. It is, but they all felt it was worth
Worth the fight.
to do
Yeah.
it for the
No, I
Board of
agree.
Education.
Right.
It's not like can't change your car insurance. It's a little
Right.
complicated.
Right.
Well, complicated.
But you can still
But
change,
going
you can still
forward-
shop around.
Do it.
It's
right.
nice to know, I mean, if there's a delta of $4 million in the premiums.
Right.
We can at least look forward to how much we will be saving. Most of it going back to the people that work here.
Correct.
But at least we can have an idea of what we're fighting for.
So what this committee will do is interview brokers.
Okay.
There's a list of brokers. They'll look at, one of the districts I talked to, they actually kept the same insurance agent, you know, everything. They're still with Cigna.
Yeah.
One of them still with Anthem. They just separated.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
for the employees, nothing actually changed. It just became two policies. So,
I didn't realize that's what we're gonna get. Good,
Yeah.
that's good, that's.
but that's there's gonna be a lot of work outside, but because we're not as busy the next few months.
It's a
joking,
good time,
haha,
yeah.
It's a good time to really vet this.
Yeah.
So, but,
Not
so
as
we'll
busy.
pass that off. So if you're interested in serving on the insurance committee,
Mhm.
board members, let me know. And
I
then,
am,
we will get some other people,
for sure.
that have a vested interest in this to come to the table to discuss this.
Summertime meetings for that, I'm sorry, remember, but do they have to be in this room? It's always hot, or can we go somewhere? Go somewhere where it's cool.
Ad hocs can do what they want.
We can anywhere,
Use my
okay.
office.
Someone will be chair of the
Okay.
ad hoc. Do I have any, any volunteers?
I'm not good at that.
I will if you
Yeah,
want.
so if you're interested.
Because I mean, I was in insurance for
Yeah, you've been in
35 years, so
insurance.
I am not
Done it.
familiar with the municipality part of it, but the language and the terms and things like that,
Okay.
I'm comfortable with, so.
So Mr. Predis will be the new chair of our
Good.
ad hoc for insurance. So if you're interested as a
You?
board member. So any board members that want to sit on it, just send me an email and let me know. Okay, so any other opposition, because we want them to be able to finalize this budget, the operating, so that they can get set up for July 1, which is in 2 weeks.
Just one question. Is the high school going to get any more PE or not? Because we have less PE time now with any high school in the state. I mean, you know, it's a mental
Well,
health.
there's they have 6 teachers, right?
You get,
They got an extra PE
Yeah.
each of this year.
oh, they did.
So,
Okay.
yeah.
Are we gonna increase the amount of time these kids get?
We're working on.
I was gonna say, I don't have it on the
Yeah.
schedule,
Yeah.
but we have
As- I'd-
already hired somebody,
Good.
so
Yeah.
yes.
Good.
So that should help.
Right, thanks.
Any other questions?
We're just declaring this is what we're going to do. So what is the likely next step? We're just saying we're going to take this to make up our shortfall.
I should be seeing those by March.
Yeah, I expect we're gonna get a response on this.
So if there's, my response is going to be, we'll see you in court.
Right.
Sounds good.
We're done. I mean, it's just, I'm not playing this game anymore.
Mhm.
So if they don't agree with the methodology we're using, we'll see them in court.
Okay, great. Thank you.
I will go.
You know,
Sometimes.
I'm sure my father didn't make this up, but I am gonna say, because I don't sleep when this stuff goes on and I stress.
We
out.
know.
All night, looking stuff up, whatever. So my father was mad because I've been up all night. So Saturday he says to me, "What are you doing?" And I said, "I'm just trying to figure this out." And he said, I'm sure he didn't make up this quote, but it was great. And it really got me thinking of, he said, "Why are you always trying to get a seat at their table?" Build your own."
Yeah.
Yeah,
I love that.
So
Build your own. Yeah.
that's
Great,
it's true.
that's great.
the knowledge of dad.
Yep. All right. So with that said, I think the budget committee is gonna need to start looking pretty soon in the start of next year at all those positions that are going into that 1 year grant, and that's gonna
Where we're
be,
gonna put them next, the
that's
fountain.
gonna be a big,
Right.
because those are, you know, the interventions, we all know, especially, I mean, all those positions are very important to us, but the interventionists, we know what happened when
Yeah.
those got decimated and we didn't have the supports available for kids, so you know,
We need another one.
we can maybe, you know, work on talking to the Alliance people about those kind of positions, but and security paras have been helpful to the schools, and, you know, the RBTs and the BCBA, they're all positions that we can't just let get away from us, so that next year we're like trying to figure this out. So let's keep those on our radar.
Just for the public's benefit, if anybody watches this, it should be known that we have to do that in the ARP3 fund, because you can't transfer an existing position into an alliance spot.
Correct.
Correct.
Just so everybody's clear on that, you can't make up a budget shortfall using alliance funding.
Correct.
Right. Good point. Good reminder.
Okay, any other questions on operating?
Nope.
Hey, capital. So this, so we've secured hopefully the capital tax with the surplus, so we can focus on the other capital projects. So
We look at John's recommendations, the highlighted sheet.
So are people comfortable? So it was stated at the public meeting on Thursday night, and it's in the presentation, that we're gonna get the capital reserves for the sale of East School.
Yeah, yeah.
Mhm.
So it's in writing,
So it's 500, right?
Mhm.
so that would be 750. Because if we can secure up both, then we can write the letter to the city for the 500,000. And I'm just gonna verify the number.
The city and board of finance said 750.
That's our capital.
That's our capital.
Sorry, I'm just looking at the exact amount they put in the presentation for each school. Each school sale proceeds moved into Board of Ed's capital reserve, 500,000.
Right.
Even. So that gives us $1,250,000.
Can we open the windows and the door again? Maybe just to get like some air.
You know what, because the sun's probably not coming. Right.
So Sue, do you want to go through John's priority list out? So the yellow
So the yellow we bumped out.
out, so those are actually cut.
So well, they're moved.
Moved, yeah.
Except the grease trap venting, so both Scott and I were wondering if that should still be considered, but
It causes fire.
definitely yes,
Right.
exactly. So definitely the hot water heater and the front entrance, and then we were also just gonna propose, but certainly the board has to decide on that 30,000 to be included. Because yes, that was our concern as well.
Well, the other problem,
Fire.
the other problem with the grease trap is people can get sick from the smell.
Yeah.
And we don't need somebody to claim that they're getting sick from the grease trap,
Mhm.
you know. It's not,
We had that at East the last year we were open and it was sickness.
it's unbearable.
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh,
It is.
Awful. Yeah, we should
I
do
think it should be
that.
done.
Yeah. So it's
then-
180 then at
Correct.
Forbes,
Yep,
nothing at Vogel Wetmore.
Vogel, yes, if you look at.
Oh,
the-
this is confusing because
I
they.
know, I'm sorry. it
That's
gets
great.
tough. Yeah.
But the next page,
Okay.
it's right
So
there.
it was 242.
Oh, there it is. Okay. Okay, gotcha.
And you can see the ADA again is pushed up for one more year. And then in the middle school would be 464. So we're just gonna have to monitor all these amounts. And then in his proposal, it is for Southwest, would be the 56,000. So you'd have the joint clock repair, the window coverings, and the ADA compliance upgrade. So he did include some of them so that we're not
Well-
really hit in the following year.
Just an observation. So for the other buildings, we pulled out replace existing window coverings, like that kind of cosmetic stuff, I guess.
Yeah.
So my question is, at Southwest, should we take out the exterior window caulk repair, the window coverings and the ADA compliance upgrades if we don't have to do them yet,
Right.
and actually engineer and install the locked foyer?
But some of the locked foyer is in our safety and security grant. And so
It is?
we will
It-
look back. I don't know how much it is. I have to check.
So
No,
I think from the,
or was that our?
seems right in your eyes.
Yeah, we'd have to check.
From the audit that they did, there were some schools that were, some things were more needed to be looked at right away.
Okay,
So I think why he chose those was because these things really need to be done right away at this particular school. That's why
Right.
this school has these and another
over a
school
locked
doesn't.
foyer? As long as it's covered in one of the security grants or it's covered when we look at that, I'm fine with this recommendation.
So the total.
But if it's not-
Southwest is actually 86,000.
But I'm right, without doing the locked foyer. I'm asking,
No.
No, it's the total is just wrong on the sheet.
Okay.
Right.
oh,
Don is checking to make sure that one, because I know that we had.
Right, what is it? 80?
That weren't included by the
86,000.
state. It's
I
not.
think I'm not doing the first.
So we would have to, in answer to Sue's question, move that 95,000 over, and then you may want to wait on your existing window coverings and on your upgrades and really focus in on that locked foyer instead.
I think
We
the
don't have
security is,
The window stuff,
Yeah, you should do the window box.
because,
Okay.
so I'm just
Yeah.
looking at the total
yep,
and it's pretty low when you factor in, sorry to skip ahead a little bit, but when you factor in the fact that the turf field is being put into the surplus request, right?
Mhm.
The total here, even assuming no state reimbursement, goes down to 981.50. So, and we have 1.2 million, so we don't actually have to trade anything out to put that locked foyer back in.
okay,
Nor would we have to for the grease trap at Forbes. So with both of those and the correction at Southwest, I still only have us a little over 1.1 million. So
okay.
we've got like room to
We can do
actually
the water,
add
we can
some
do both
stuff
water
back
heaters
in.
then. I would leave both water heaters then.
I thought both water heaters were.
I thought somebody said take one. out.
Yeah, no, there is.
Yeah.
I like that.
Yeah, so
Okay.
Just to clarify though, I just want to clarify because that's not what we had in the original budget. It's
Yeah,
just
where's
because
the original?
John has moved these other items. out.
What was the original number? That was my question.
oh, it's on the other one.
It's on the-
It's on the first handout,
Doesn't have any of the highlights.
this one.
This one.
The first one, we removed it out.
Yeah, it was 1.7 million, so.
So
1.769.
I just want to clarify before we get too far. Torrington, we did not receive funding for that install locked foyer, so we would have to move that 135 over. So you'd have to look at Torrington to really decide what you wanted there, because as you're saying.
I
I think we want the locked foyer.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So Ed, did you hear that?
Yeah, and so that put us a
That's
little over.
135.
So I just took the grease trap back out and now we're on the budget.
I don't think we can take the grease trap out.
Take the
Then
grease trap
you're gonna be over budget unless you take something else. That was
People are gonna be sick. You
Well,
can't.
you
did
can't
we
take-
take out,
Can't.
did we,
That's a help.
that.
did we take out the,
Because the window-
32,000 for the window coverings at Southwest?
I didn't. Did we?
The only thing about the window coverings is they impact the temperature of the room.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So it's-
but we're not
it's
doing them at any other building.
really cool. Well, middle school
But
just,
because the
got that.
Southwest is so damaged,
So-
it needs to be done.
The window coverings?
No, well,
I'm not
No,
talking about
the-
the caulking. I'm talking about the window. Every other building that had chained window coverings, it was taken out.
She's,
Oh.
she's talking
We're
about
only-
that.
Except Southwest.
Southwest.
So I only have this over by 21,000. So there's a lot of wiggle room. We could, I mean, I don't know the severity relative to the other schools, but Southwest has a $24,000 ADA compliance upgrade. We're not really doing them at a lot of the other.
Right, I had said that
Facilities.
earlier
Yeah,
too.
just-
Right, that and the window
You
coverings.
take that out from.
Do
You only
we
offer
not
20
need to
grand.
do both? Do
Yeah.
we need to do both?
You don't need to do both.
No, we only have to do one. We could just do the ADA.
That's
Right,
do
so,
the ADA.
sorry, just so you know where I am, it's, I do
Where
this
are you
every
at?
time. I do this every time, but, so what I have, right, is starting at 981 and 50.
Where are you getting 981 and 50?
It's just 1,081,050 minus 100 grand for the turf.
Okay,
So then adding back in the Forbes grease trap, correcting the $30,000 error for Southwest,
Right.
right, to make it correct.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Putting in both locked foyers. That's where we are 1,271.50. So we are $21,050 over. So if we drop an ADA compliance somewhere. if
At
it's not very
Southwest.
se- If it's not very severe,
that's
I
the
don't
only
know.
one. Southwest is the only one that
I
has.
don't
it,
know, and I
24.
don't, right, I don't want to suggest that firmly because I'm not sure how severe the compliance issue is.
Well, let me
I don't even know what
suggest,
it is.
could we move the grease trap to the surplus,
We have it.
which then would reduce some of the computers we could get, but maybe we could.
That's assuming Laura doesn't need more money for those two students that came in today.
I
Yeah,
wouldn't-
so
I wouldn't touch the surface.
yeah, not until we know.
Jeff,
I wanted to suggest a different way of looking at this slightly. We're picking the various things, but I've watched from the other side of the table, the board cut things like refinishing the gym floor and us pay a penalty for it years later. So we skipped it for like 4 years in a row. Then I saw the item come across for a significant refurbishment of the gym floors in some of the elementary schools. So replacing a pressure reducing valve. He took it out with no reschedule over at Torrington Middle School. There's probably a reason for that. And those are the kinds of things that if they don't work.
Yeah.
It will damage something that's going to cost us more money. Not refinishing the gym floor, I don't know the condition of it, but we already did this once years ago and it costs us more money. So some of these things, like the ADA compliance, we don't know the reasons. So maybe we can push them off, maybe we can't. But I would suggest we prioritize things that aren't going to cost us more money later by not
Mhm.
doing them now.
everything.
Well,
No.
I mean, but we also have to look at like. I think that John did a really good job in dissecting that for us as far as. Prioritizing. What could get worse if damaged, aside from that, the valve that you just pointed
No,
out, that
it's just-
15,
I don't know why they took it off.
yeah, that's
Well,
something I
but there's
guess.
these things that aren't even rescheduled, so
Maybe they fixed it.
We've got one of them rescheduled. And
I'm just curious, things that aren't rescheduled that have a lasting impact, now they're not even on the capital request for next year. What trouble are we leaving ourselves down the road for by not addressing, and they're not even expensive items here. There are some of these things.
I assume right now they're not on, they're taken care of. I don't know why he would do it. We do something about it. He's got it on there for.
The reach trap got removed too, though. Entirely, without.
Oh, you mean, oh,
Yeah.
yeah.
Sure, you've seen that.
Yes, he put this one here.
We probably figured, leave it to us to
Yeah, but
figure it out.
Torrington Middle School.
That's what I would do.
I think it's just that they're not immediate problems. They were like probably highlighted in the facilities assessment as a sort of, hey, at some point, you're gonna have to do this. So without a timeline. Suggested or even implied in those documents, that may well be the case, because a lot of the items in their presentation. Were things that they, as they discussed, and they said, look, this isn't a problem now, and I can't tell you when it might be, but it might be, so we're gonna put it in your suggested capital.
Right.
I think every is a problem. I mean, you have a good point. I don't know what John, he knows more than we do about
Sure.
the aging of some of these things like that.
If he did put them out, like all these other ones, the soup one put out with the yellow, the expenses moved. So why are these things that seem unusual are just removed entirely? And
Yeah.
if they weren't important to everybody else's point, they wouldn't have been.
It could
The
be, it could be an error. He made
Right.
an additional error right here. It could be an error.
Right.
Sure.
Yeah.
And, or just
I'm
figured
asking.
they'll want to talk about,
Yeah.
maybe he left it up to us to figure out where to put it. Scott has something to say, I think.
I think you have to add an inflation factor over the top on everything, so I wouldn't.
Oh, everything is
True.
Yep.
gonna be a nightmare. But that's the way Torrington does it.
Calculation, I would.
Don't.
Add what?
Pay 20.
How much?
5 times.
Oh, okay, so
Yeah.
John says, yes, we did. He's still answering your question. He did replace the pressure reducing valve at the middle school, so that's
Oh,
done.
Okay.
Okay,
Excellent.
and then, yeah. Let me find out. I don't think he.
Oh, thanks, John.
Gym floor. Yes, I will.
Thank you, God.
Maybe the grease trap too he did, like you just said, Fiona,
Yeah.
right?
It's
Just have it
pretty
on
handy.
speaker.
Yeah, he did that, yeah.
Can he call us real quick?
Yeah.
Where John-
Special guests.
Assume like percent, it's another 100,000.
Just, we're gonna make these decisions.
Oh,
Assuming
absolutely.
8%
Yeah.
inflation.
Absolutely.
Oh, no, I did that for you. I'm not very good at that. It's not quite,
You're not right now.
it'll be a little.
Sorry, Ed.
He says, yes, I can.
But round figure.
Okay, I will call.
Yeah, well, it's 100,000 if you use the wrong starting number. But I did.
This was our original, what we purchased. This one.
That was what John had been presenting to us
He's loud.
here.
No, trying to figure out how much, based on these numbers we can use, if we take Scott's suggestion, to use
The last.
8%.
Maybe
for the
he's had
inflation, but it's been a while since I did.
At least tonight we do.
Yeah.
So we're trying to go through the capital plan and make some decisions. Can you help us?
Yeah.
I guess that's why you're on the line, right?
Yes. And-
Okay, so when we're looking at Forbes School, the grease trap venting.
Done.
that's
Done.
Yes. Thank you. Excellent.
And then,
What was the other one?
see.
Playground,
hang on.
refinish the floor at Torrington Middle.
Pressure
Torrington Middle.
valve at the middle school, he said was done.
The middle school
Okay.
gym
And
floor.
then what about the middle school floor? Cause that's taken off. Refinish the floor, paint new lines.
I
Where-
thought you
where
went to
you
see
want
that,
that one?
John.
That's the gym, that's done.
Yeah,
Oh,
John, you
that's
went to
okay.
see that.
Oh my God, that's awesome.
It
Okay.
was early in the year because you went up there to see it. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
So the lock foyer at Southwest,
School
we are working on that this summer, right?
and the valve.
Yes, I gave you a bunch of quotes on that.
Yep, so we should be okay. All right, so So- is
So
it
we
what?
don't have to put the,
Somewhere else.
That one, when we were, Don and I were just talking, that one was not funded in the security,
No,
I believe,
So we
right?
so we need the money for that.
So we do need that,
We
right?
need to add
You
that
got
back.
that, Ed?
Okay.
So
So
95.
We need to add that back in the
But not the other one.
23-24.
Okay,
Sorry, we need to.
then.
Troy for two?
We were
Yeah, so
talking
that-
about moving out the replacing existing window coverings at Southwest and moving the ADA compliance upgrades, because it looks like you moved a lot of those to the following year to 24-25. Does that make sense?
yes.
Okay,
Okay.
so we can, we could do.
That goes
Southwest.
24-25, the
Yeah,
30 and
for
the
for
32.
the window coverings and the
24.
ADA. I'm sorry, go ahead, John.
24-25.
No,
With
so
24
that there's not confusion, because I did get that letter from Michelle Miller from Silver Pillow and Associates that said that as long as you had a plan, there was no emergency requirement to get a compliance issue updated, as long as you have a plan,
Oh, good.
even if it was 5 years out.
Okay.
Okay,
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 What's the
Yeah.
blue? What?
that's great.
But
So Donna, can I ask a question about that though? So if we don't do it to, let's say, both of our 4 or 5 schools. And then I have a student move in that cannot access either building because neither one is handicap accessible.
Oh.
They, if the elevator is not up to current code, they can't use it, type of thing. So how do we handle that then?
Well, we don't have any elevator issues that aren't up to code. So that's fine, but even if you had a student that went into a building and you had some accessibility issues for that student, you could either address that right up front right away, or as long as you had a plan to address that. Even if the plan resulted in being 2 years out, because they can't hold your feet to the fire on that and make you get compliance immediately on it.
Yeah, but I have to get the kid in the school though.
And that's the reason why we were redoing the capital plan, because remember, the board wanted us to move that stuff up. And then we had to shift some things around and we were able to move those out because we do have a plan to replace them, but there were other things that needed to get replaced sooner.
And I think that if we have elevator access, it depends what the student needs, obviously.
Right.
But if there's an issue and it's an emergency, then we're gonna have to respond. But I think as long as we have wheelchair accessible and elevator, then those are usually our biggest needs. But if you have a specific student with a specific need, we'd have to address it.
Absolutely.
Question.
Sue has her hand up.
Are those the two buildings that we're talking about for ADA compliance, the elementary level that you're talking about, Laura? Are they not able to get wheelchairs in those buildings?
No, I'm
So
not
that was
saying
like
no.
a- okay.
No. It's
It was
just
a
that I know,
Okay.
from
Bathroom issues.
previous
Okay.
administrative experience, that, there was an issue that it happened to be the elevator.
Okay.
So it was not specifically up to code. So if there are certain things, I can't say to a parent, oh, well, we're gonna do that in 2 years.
Right. Yeah. right.
Okay, and meanwhile, then I'm gonna have to outplace them
Mhm.
because we can't meet the needs,
Mhm.
which that's not fee.
Right.
So it's like, it just makes me nervous. It's no different though. I just will add this. If we don't upgrade the middle school or the high school, we have one school.
Right.
So if the middle school is not accessible, then,
Right.
we can't provide. I do know it can't be an undue burden on the district. I do know that's part of the law.
Mhm.
That's
But-
exactly it.
yeah.
It can't be an undue
Which I think we're in a position.
Well, I think if there was ever a student issue, obviously we
We would
would address that
Absolutely,
immediately.
yeah.
If there was
Right.
an access issue for a student.
Send to a school that is.
ADA compliance issues that were cited by Silver Petrocelli were really,
Minor.
there wasn't any major accessibility issues.
Right.
They were simple ones like, a grab handle on a ground, or
Right.
there might have been a step that was, like a step in a sidewalk or an entrance door, or something that was off a little bit, or it was all really kind of stuff.
Okay.
Yeah, these are.
So does anyone have any questions for John? So that,
Mm-mm.
do you have a question for John?
John, in that budget where it says 24,000 for ADA, but it says it's an OSC GNR reimbursement grant, is the number you're carrying the gross amount or our responsibility after the reimbursements?
So if you look at the bottom, there's gonna be so the reimbursement rate is 72, 73.
Yes.
Around there. So the number that we're carrying at the very bottom
Yeah.
is the number that's the responsibility of the taxpayers of Torrington after the reimbursement.
Okay, so the 24,000 is the net cost of the district, not the gross number.
Right, always remembering that can, could be 70, it could be 65. it could be-
Hopefully not that long.
Exactly.
Thank you, John.
Wait, one more question on the
Judy has a question.
exterior window control joint caulk repair at Southwest School. That's something that you have in for 23-24. Is it to prevent damage to
Yeah,
inside?
So what's happened, so the architects did when they toured all the buildings, they really looked at a lot of condition issues. And what they had found there at Southwest School, in the control joints and in the window caulking around the windows that where it meets the mortar brick, is that the caulking was starting to fail. ultimately that results in water infiltration into the structure, and over a long period of time, that could be a problem. So that's why it was pointed out. And I'm always an advocate of, if you can prevent moisture from coming in the building, it's a great thing to do.
Right.
You don't put water in the building.
And then the existing window coverings, if we had to move that to next year, that doesn't cause any issues, because
Yeah, I mean, that was, really what that's for, the window coverings was really about smart boards, right? Because
Well,
smart boards into the
yeah.
district and everything, that really didn't have the best window coverings, and so when the light filters in through those windows, it's really hard to see the technology.
Yeah, okay.
That was really
That's
kind of
helpful to know.
driven by the teachers themselves going, yeah, we really need to, kind of be able to darken it a little so the kids can see the board better.
Yep, okay.
Jason has a fix for that.
Shower curtain?
Board up windows.
All right, that's helpful.
Southwest and 157.
Any other questions for John? Just that we're not keeping
Yeah.
him. Thank you for taking our
Thank
call.
you so much.
John,
Thank you. We do.
All of us.
Gary.
take care.
Bye, John. Thank you.
Southwest.
Well, that makes that easy.
Oh, I'm not doing it.
Yeah.
All right, so
Okay,
you
to
are,
Add to the
okay.
Yeah,
total.
so,
that's what I didn't have, that 157 at Southwest?
Southwest. right.
Okay,
So you have to add 157 to your 980,105.
yeah, well, so a
So
lot
what's
of
your
numbers have changed now.
well,
Okay.
let's we start from the top.
Yes.
Let's start with forms again.
Do we have enough money?
I'm getting there.
Yeah, let's, all right,
That's enough money.
start from the top.
Okay.
All right, so. For starters, if we assume that 8% of the capital budget should be set aside for an assumed inflationary increase to these base prices,
Mhm.
then we would budget 1,157,000 of these, based on these numbers, reserving, if you will, 92,560 for inflationary cost increases. Which comes out to 1,249,560, which is the closest I could get it without sort of really nitpicking it.
Yeah.
So if we want to do that, right, if we want to leave a little bit of a cushion,
Mhm.
right now with the way we've done it, we're a little over because the initial budget, when you correct John's initial initial suggested budget, if you correct for the $30,000 error that he started with in Southwest.
Yeah.
Was $1,111,050. Now we are adding, if I have it right, the two locked foyers. So that's 95,000 for Southwest
Mhm.
and 135,000 for Torrington.
Can you just go by school so I could just pick it up?
Ellen's
No.
gonna have to do that after. She went school by school.
Yeah, I
So
wrote
we'll
it
do
on the
that
back.
after him.
Oh, you
We'll
wrote it
go
on
with
the
it.
paper.
She'll do it.
All right, I
Okay.
got you.
Ellen's more organized.
Yeah.
And then we are deducting, as I recall it, the windows for Southwest, the ADA upgrades for Southwest, and then the turf field, which is in the surplus request rather than the capital. That leaves 1,185,050. So if we wanted to limit ourselves to protect ourselves from inflationary increases, we are over by $28,050. Now, if we want to fudge that a little bit,
You can
right,
say
and
business.
we could just use a different
Yeah.
inflation number,
Right.
and we're well within
Yeah.
our actual budget.
Yeah.
Okay,
So
so
the
what window?
I say go
Foyer
for
at
it.
Torrington, I remember he
The
initially
shirt
carried
and
that
the
at like $70,000, then the engineering
I
came in.
think it's.
And it was like close to $250,000. It's highlighted in blue. Where's the rest of that money coming from? Is that blue saying we're getting a security grant? It was left over a piece of it, but I remember clearly that.
Blue just meant, I think that he's moving it out.
I think so too. I think maybe it was a misclick. It was supposed to be yellow.
Yeah,
Right.
There was a.
That we
huge
already
amount.
put the 136 in capital reserve. We've used some of that. So I'm going to, in the next day, request that from Board of Finance so that we can pull that money in. But I do believe that it's over, so
It was a
we
huge.
won't
amount.
have enough.
But is this?
We won't have enough in capital reserve.
So sure.
Is that what you- so
Cover
then,
that
so,
in what we had
It's not a
requested
first one.
originally,
so should,
because we only have like 136.
so we should continue to use these numbers And
For now.
in addition to
until we-
what's in capital
Yeah.
reserve to assume that it's.
I just think, I didn't want us to be off by 100 grand, because I know that
Yeah,
number's not
yeah.
35.
If it comes in high, we don't come on it.
Now, here's a question related to this for you, Scott, or anybody who knows the answer. So if we leave 92,000, whatever unbudgeted, well, a little less, it'll be what? Like 67,000 unbudgeted. That's okay, right? Like that can sit in the capital account as we need to for prices to go up. Okay,
We do want to make sure that we're earmarking it though.
We have a line item.
Yeah,
Mhm.
Would be better.
Yeah. So you could add a line item for that?
I'm sorry.
You would add a line item for that?
No, I think you would up,
You would pick something else like
I think
that.
they specifically asked that, identify all the monies and that
I would put
it
it,
won't ever get lost, right? So we can always go back and say, yes.
split it into the
based
lock
on that,
foyers.
That's not much.
I would say put it into each line item, the 8%.
Just put in the two big items, and then when you go out the bid and the bid's lower, then you have a surplus. That's accounted for.
And I think the locked foyers, I don't think we ever want to be in a position to say that these schools are more important than these. schools.
Right.
Yeah, no, absolutely not. That's a given.
Yeah,
We have to do that.
Request to go to the school with the locked foyer.
Right, yeah, that's,
Right?
yeah, you are, right. I know, I would be asking.
so this leaves us at a 5.2-ish% assumption for inflation, rather than an 8, which I feel like is,
Better than nothing.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's, it's 64,510. That would be sort of, not
Set aside,
or set
reserve.
aside, or added to the cost assumptions, however you want to factor it. Out of the 1.25.
That works.
So
Are you opposed to that, Scott? Are you sure?
What are your
Just for
thoughts?
the
Do you have
record,
any?
you would prefer we have the 8%, just.
Yes.
That's okay.
Yeah, because one, there was one job that was quoted at one number, but an actuality is a little bit higher, so.
Mhm.
I think that's.
Which
but
job
all
was
these
that,
are
Scott?
placeholders 'cause
Right,
they're not out to
exactly,
bid, so that's-
right.
well, right, if we have to drop a
Going
project.
forward?
We have to drop it then.
It sucks.
No, what's a touring for?
The drain,
No, no.
okay.
Yeah. None of them are working. All right, so any opposition to handling it that way?
Better not be kept close enough. Nothing.
Any opposition to handling it that way with the understanding that if we don't have enough money, we will have to drop it?
Yes.
That it?
But I think we want to go through the school level. I'm sorry, Gary, but we want to just go through the school level to just real quick, what we're adding back in. Right? For Sue and Scott to update.
yeah, I can get it later from Ellen.
It's up to you.
when she
She's-
has it.
She's done it.
Why don't
Yeah.
Ellen and Ed
Yeah.
will work with you to get.
Okay.
the
That'd be
exact
great.
breakdown.
Okay.
Do you have everything, Ellen, or do you want mine? You got it? Okay. I know. I was just trying to answer her questions on the side and
Yeah, I got
you
it.
got it?
Entertain a motion to go into executive session regarding non-union contract at 7:33 PM, inviting in just Sue Lonsky.
So moved.
All those in favor?
Aye.
I,
So Gary and Jeff,